All right, for this, guys, we got 3.4 and 3.5 notes. The first theorem we're going to talk about is 3.7. It says if two lines are parallel to the same line, then they are parallel to each other. So let's say we call this A, B, and C here for each line. We would know that A is parallel to B because of the markings. We would also know that B is parallel to C. Whenever that happens, we now know that A is parallel to C, and that's kind of just like your transitive property. It's just using it with parallel lines, okay? All right. For our second theorem here, 3.8, says in a plane, if two lines are perpendicular, to the same line, then they are parallel to each other. So if A and B are both perpendicular to C, then we know that A has to be parallel to B. All right? That's all it really says there. And then at the bottom here it says, conversely, if a line is perpendicular to one of the two parallel lines, then it is also perpendicular to the other line. All right? All right, so let's use this exercise here below to help us figure things out here. It says A is perpendicular to B and B is perpendicular to C. So if we know that that's the case, we could draw a picture if we wanted to. So we know that A, we'll say, is this line. B has to be perpendicular to that. B and C also have to be perpendicular, so that would be putting C just like that, which means if we have that two things, then we know that these two lines have to be parallel, so A is parallel to C. All right, and that's a visual representation of it. Let's do 7 here. It says A and B are perpendicular, so here's A. We'll draw B perpendicular to it. All right, and then it says B and C are parallel, so we can draw C just like this. If that happens, then we know there has to be a 90-degree angle here, which means A is perpendicular to C. All right? All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is the triangle angle sum theorem. The triangles always have a sum of 180 for their angles, okay? So the angles of a triangle will always add up to 180 degrees. So using that, let's do a little bit of algebra for this first one here. The three angles are, the first one we have x plus 44 plus 38, and we know that they should all equal 180 because the three angles of a triangle now add up to 180, okay? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to combine like terms here. We're going to take 44 and 38 and add them together, and we get 82. And then to get rid of that 82, we're going to subtract it from both sides. So if we take 180 minus 82, we should get an answer of 98 degrees. So we can go ahead and say that x equals 98. All right? Now, we're going to do the same thing with example 2, but I'm going to show you a little bit easier way of doing it is if you know the three angles of a triangle add up to 180, we could just take 180, subtract the 90 that you see here, and subtract the 32 that you see there, and that gives you whatever's left over, which would be 58 degrees. So you could do it showing the algebra, or you could do it without, but make sure you know if there's say there's an x plus 4 here, then you would need to do the algebra way, so that way you could solve it a little bit easier, okay? All right, moving on now. We have the exterior angles theorem. This is the sum of the remote interior angles is equal to the exterior angles. So as a visual representation, we have an exterior angle here on the outside. Then we have the two remote interior angles here and here. They're the two angles that do not touch that exterior angle. So they're the non-adjacent interior angles, okay? So what the exterior angle theorem says is whatever the exterior angle is going to equal the two remote interior angles added together, all right? So we're going to use that to help us solve for example 1 and example 2 here at the bottom. So let's solve for x first, all right? So x is an exterior angle, which means that if I'm going to solve for it, I take the two remote interior angles and add them together. So we take 34 plus 21. Whenever you take 34 and 21 and add them together, then you would get that x equals 55 degrees. All right? Now, you could do it that way, or you could have just found y and then used that to solve for x. Let's go ahead and solve for y now. We know that the three angles of a triangle add up to 180. So 180 minus 21 minus 34 would tell us that y is 125. All right? So that's how you could find y and x. Now, the key is you should know, because these are a linear pair and they're on a straight line, they should definitely add up to 180. So 55 and 125, when you add together, do give you 180, so you know you've done it correctly. All right, so let's do example 2 here. The exterior angle, which is 94, equals the two remote interior angles added together. So 2x plus 60. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 60 from both sides, and I get that 34 equals 2x. Then we got to divide by 2, and x equals 17. All right? All right, so those are our notes for sections 3, 4, and 3, 5. Make sure you have these filled out and bring them in next class.